Hello, everyone. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak today as well. I am going to talk about the future of skills. So we have all been talking a lot about AI, but what does this mean for the future of skills? So I'm going to go into how the game has changed, what is and stays valuable, how fast these changes are coming. Like, is this today? Is this in 5 years? And what can we do to learn, to acquire the skills that we need, and to stay ahead? So we've been talking for about a day and a half now about AI. One of the things we did mention here and there was how it affects the future of work. In the last year alone, IBM announced that they were putting on hold about 73,000 jobs because they thought this now could be automated using AI. There was an article in May that about 4,000 jobs were being made redundant due to the use of AI today. The World Economic Forum came out suggesting that 42% of business tasks will be automated by 2027. Now we're getting towards the end of 2023 now, so this is 4 years away. And in June, McKinsey did an analysis that came to the conclusion that about 60 to 70% of tasks with employees today could be automated using the technology that already exists, let alone the technology that is going to develop over the next 12, 24 months. So who am I to talk about this? I'm Joshua Wohle. I'm the CEO of a company called Mainstone. We're building an AI coach for adult learners with a mission to unlock the potential of humanity by bringing personal and professional growth to every individual. Previously, I built a company called Super Awesome. That became one of the biggest kids technology companies in the world. It was acquired by Epic Games. I'm an investor and a venture partner with Emerge Education, which is the most active early-stage education venture capital in Europe. And I run the biggest regular AI meetup in the world at the moment through Mainstone as well. So the first thing to think about, or at least where I started, is to try and figure out, are there any parallels that have come up through history that we can try to take to understand what is going on? And I think we can learn a lot about what has happened in software engineering over the last 20 years to understand what might happen in many other industries over the next few. So 15 years ago, the ability to code used to be a key differentiator as a software engineer. So just the ability to understand how to write Java, C, even just web pages through HTML for anyone that understands what that means, used to be enough to get you a job because there were very few people that knew how to code in the first place. Today, there are more than 2.5 million modules that exist in Node.js alone. Node.js is a coding platform. It's a platform for engineers, and modules are basically a way to take a piece of data, put it through a transformation, get an output. And the job of an engineer, most of the time today, is no longer about producing code. It is actually about taking the output of one program, putting it into a module, taking the output of what comes out of that module, putting it into a third and a fourth and a fifth until you hit the result that you want, and thinking about producing a much bigger solution. What I am arguing is that I think what is happening in AI is the exact same thing, is that we are seeing AIs pop up, automating different vertical functions in different industries, and it's happening really fast. So it can create a marketing strategy for you. It can it can create predictive algorithms. It can even do curriculum design. It's looking at very specific tasks. And my argument here is that these vertical tasks are very similar to what has happened in software engineering with these modules. Over time, more and more people built different modules that were used by different people to build on top of, and the same thing is happening with these AIs. There are all these vertical models. So you might be familiar with Jarvis, which was one of the first kind of big AI projects that took hold. It's a marketing platform to help you create copy. You're probably familiar with Midjourney. You hopefully at this point in the conference are familiar with ChatGPT. But you might not yet be familiar with Harvey. That automates a lot of legal work around. Or with Ultimate, whose entire purpose is not just to automate a part of your customer support, but to replace it entirely. Or one of the ones that I'm more excited about is a plugin called AI Counsel for ChatGPT that automatically takes a question that you have, figures out who in history has interesting viewpoints to express on that particular task, and then brings that to your attention to help you brainstorm through whatever problem you have in front of you. Now, we are at the very start of this. This landscape is January 2023, and the list of companies is not just the list of AI companies that exist today. This is the list of AI API companies. So all the other AI companies are building on top of these AI companies that exist. So the number of AI companies that are about to hit the market is a strong multiple of whatever you see on this slide today. And all of this is to hit the market still. We are at the extreme beginning of it. Now, and see, because I don't have animations, I'm spoiling the reveal every time. What I thought, okay, if we can learn from computer science, from software engineering, I thought, well, what's the best place to start to figure out what might be useful in the future? So I asked one of the biggest groups of CTOs in the world, what are the skills you look for today when you're hiring software engineers? And the ability to code didn't even make the top 3. It was all about the ability to learn, the ability to collaborate, and the ability to solve a problem that's right in front of you. And, well, we had yesterday Microsoft obviously on stage, but Scott Guthrie in March of this year, so this is, I mean, in AI terms, that's 20 years ago, said that 40% of all code that was committed to GitHub was non-modified AI-generated code in March of this year. And so that's an AI that's built all this code that has been submitted, and in some cases runs in production, in many cases it wouldn't. But again, the ability to code, not even in top 3. So I then cross-referenced this with another study. There was a study from Pearson in partnership with Google, and they came to a very similar result. They were trying to figure out what are the skills of the future that will be relevant, that will be in demand from employers, and the ability to collaborate, the ability to learn, and the ability to solve a problem, to look at your achievement here, to take the responsibility for a particular problem, were part of those 3. Sorry, part of the 5 that they came up with. So the next step is to talk about what we can do today to try and build these skills. And luckily enough, AI is again part of this discussion. There's a really interesting book that, if you haven't read yet, is David Epstein's Range. It talks about kind environments and wicked environments. Kind environments are easy to learn in, wicked environments are hard to learn in. A kind environment is represented mostly by an extremely fast feedback loop. So it is, you have a clear outcome, you can easily measure what happens, and you can quickly adjust your reaction based on the feedback that comes back from the learning that happens. Programming is a perfect example of a kind environment. If you make a mistake, you run it, you instantly understand it's not working. Today, you get very good feedback on what might not be working. 20 years ago, not much so, but at least it was fast. The wicked environment is represented by much more ambiguity. So the ability to collaborate, to solve problems, or to learn are very much wicked skills. A very good example of a profession that would be more in the wicked environment is investing. You make a decision about a certain investment, specifically early stage investment. You make a decision, you might wait 10 years for a result, and then even if that result was positive or negative, you still don't know, was that because I made a good decision, because I was lucky, because of external factors? So it's extremely hard to figure out how to actually get better at that process. Now, with AI, we have the opportunity to accelerate that feedback loop at multiple stages. So you've got action, result, feedback. And that's the kind of feedback loop that goes through. At the result level, you can use AI, and for those of you that came to the workshop I was doing before, was one of the things we looked at, is you can get AI to simulate a result ahead of time. You can try to understand what might be particular results that come out from a decision that I have in front of me at the moment. Simply by being able to generate that, it's very similar to talking it over with another person, and you're able to accelerate the feedback or the result phase that you go through. And from a feedback perspective, the same thing. When you get to a result, you can use AI to contextualize and try to understand what might have led my decision to get to this result. Now, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to allow you to iterate through various cycles of getting to understand what the result of how you got to a result of your actions. And so in both of these cases, we're able to chip a significant chunk out of that feedback cycle. And even though it's not perfect, it makes wicked environments act and feel much more like kind environments before. So it should allow us to learn much faster from them. Now, I think with all of this going on, we're at a once-in-a-lifetime tipping point. So we have been talking about, again, AI for the last 2 days or so. The speed at which the technology is evolving keeps accelerating, and the time at which any particular skill stays relevant keeps getting smaller. So if you wait a year to try and implement anything we talked about here, it's probably going to be irrelevant already. This poses a very interesting question for degrees and qualifications and signaling. How do we go about understanding the skills that someone has built up, how relevant they are, and how they can be applied in the workforce? Degrees have a hard problem here because if a degree takes 3 years to go through, by the time you're done, if those degrees are focusing on skills to apply in the workforce very specifically, then there's a high chance those skills are obsolete by the time you're actually applying them. We went from a world of total information overload, total information scarcity. It used to be hard to actually access the information, to the opposite now. You can get everything you want within a second, and the problem is to try and get to the gems, get to the things that are actually important, that really move the needle, and to sift through all the rubbish that is being thrown at us. I mean, hallucinations are now part of this whole equation, which is that you have to figure out what the AI tells you, how much of it is true, how much of it is not. And employers are taking note. They're still using degrees today as a proxy, but if you ask any hiring manager, any talent professional today, you ask them, are you happy with the fact you're using degrees in one way or another to try and filter through CVs? Nobody will tell you, or very few will tell you, that that is something they want. It's just that they don't have better equivalents that exist. And you're seeing the shift happening because they're starting to take into account micro-credentials. They're starting to look, there's a big movement towards skill-based hiring, trying to identify which specific skills do you have that are relevant for a job that I'm going to hire you for today. And again, I think that we can learn from software engineering. Software engineering today, a good GitHub profile, for those of you that are engineers, a GitHub profile or a Stack Overflow profile today will get you more job interviews than a degree from a top-tier university. Because it talks about the specific skills that you've built up, it gives examples and contextualizes it to what you can actually do. I think that we can take inspiration from these models and try and understand what does a portfolio-type approach look like for skills to be able to hire from in other industries. And this is one of the things that we're looking at in Mainstone. So to bring this back to the start, 42% of business tasks will be automated by 2027. 60 to 70% of employee time spent on tasks today can be automated with technology that exists today. This is not a problem that companies will have to deal with even in 5 years. They are dealing with it today, and they'll have to adapt very, very quickly. So what can you do, and where can you start? The biggest thing, short term, and I started my workshop with this today as well, is suspend your disbelief, which is that if you think your job is not going to be touched by AI, There's a small possibility, you're right. But in almost all circumstances I've talked to people before, it is likely not the case. Suspend your disbelief, try and argue the other side, and engage with the technology. So long as you're engaging with the technology and try to understand how you can leverage it to get better at your job, you have much better chances than everyone that isn't. And then longer term, focus on these 3 skills: collaboration, problem solving, and learning. With people and using AI to learn them in the first place. And think about AI as a co-pilot, helping you get through this, helping you upskill yourself and acquire the skills that you need to be productive, rather than thinking about it as an external entity that you have no control over. Basically, what I'm saying is the future of skills is already here. It's just unevenly distributed, to paraphrase William Gibson. So there we go. Any questions? So it seems that proving one's competencies has become more important than obtaining a degree. However, how can these abilities be evaluated? Assessing capabilities can be challenging as they are not easily captured through simple tests or surveys. I totally agree. Simple tests and surveys are not very appropriate, and I would actually argue that part of that second part of the question can answer the first, which is that AI is much more than simple tests and surveys. And so one of the things I am most excited by is that AI actually has, when you give it the right rubric, when you give it a framework to think about how to evaluate someone's skills, it can look at full transcripts of conversations. It can look at interactions that people have with each other and try to understand what are the skills demonstrated in those discussions, in those qualities of work to begin with. We ran through this earlier today. Now models can start to analyze actual finished work. So one of the things we did in the workshop I ran is we uploaded some marketing collateral, and AI evaluated what the quality of the marketing collateral was. What did it demonstrate in terms of skills that the individual might or might not possess? So I think that there are many ways that AI can be leveraged to try and look much more specifically at individual skills, and we'll have to try and figure out how to fine-tune those. We're going to have to look at different ways to include people in that loop to fine-tune and make sure that the assessment is accurate, but I think AI can help.
Okay, and next, please.
Yep. So the educational scene must also change in line with the changes in the industry. What do you think needs to be changed most urgently? That is a very good question. I think the thing that needs to be changed most urgently is what is being taught. So right now, in most universities, there's still a big focus on teaching the vertical skills that would somehow make you a productive member of an employer at a future date. And I think those have the very real risk of being obsolete by the time you have finished that degree. So for universities to focus on those 3 skills that I was mentioning, and there are a few more, obviously, and actually Stephen pointed out yesterday that there are obviously another 10, 20, 30 that sit under the umbrella of the 3 that I mentioned. But focusing on those 3 skills, the core skills that are transferable between jobs and across tasks, if those are the skills that are being taught, I think that the education system has a much better chance than often how it's being conflated today, where you're being taught very specific skills that, again, tend to not be applicable in a work environment.
Okay, we are done here because due to the time restriction. Thank you so much, Professor. 자, 여러분 큰 박수 부탁드립니다.